Today we're going to take a look at just how far you can push the boundaries of a boost circuit. The Surplus Elemental Overdriver is meant to be a bit of an all-rounder when it comes to everything treble boost, straight up full range boost, mild overdrive, kind of dirty boost, everywhere up to that kind of mid-range drive level. We wanted to create something that had a bit of a no-nonsense utilitarian kind of feel to it. Something that was pretty basic and easy to use, but just has a couple of additional elements that just lets you run the gamut of everything between clean boost right through to like mid overdrive. And it really doesn't get any more back to basics than where this circuit has its roots, which is with the single stage transistor amplifier. The image I'm showing now is quite literally a textbook example of a single stage transistor amplifier, which has a myriad of uses, not just in guitar pedals. And for those of you that are au fait with schematics, you're probably thinking this circuit looks quite familiar, and there's a good reason for that, because there are a lot of different pedals that make use of this type of circuit one way or another. The Electroharmonix LPB1 is a near enough one-for-one exact replica of this, with the exception of one or two part changes. Similarly, the Screaming Bird treble booster is also the exact same circuit, apart from a couple of part changes that cut the low end out. Many of the pedals built by Love Pedal use this circuit or something very similar to it as a starting point for some of their basic overdrive circuits. The infamous Big Muff fuzz is 4 of these running in series with a couple of sets of clipping diodes in the middle. And one other common use of this circuit is to use it as a make-up gain stage. And what I mean by a make-up gain stage is that it's basically a fixed boost pedal that's shoved on the end of the rest of the circuit. Pedals, for example, like the Fox Tone Machine fuzz, uses this circuit for that purpose. The really good thing about this circuit is that it's a perfect blank canvas to add on a couple of basic building blocks of pedal design to, and that's exactly what we did with the Surplus. 2 channels that are available are an example of pot swapping. Both sets of gain and volume controls are hooked up to the same circuit, and which switch you have on determines which 2 of those controls are active in the circuit at any one time. The best way I can think of to describe this to people is to effectively think about it as if you have 2 analog presets. So you could set one for like a big, bright, clean boost, and then you could set the other one for a pretty aggressive mid-gain overdrive. The way the gain controls themselves actually function is an example of playing around with the bias of a transistor. When biased the way you would have seen in the textbook schematic I showed earlier, this circuit works pretty cleanly with minimal distortion. But if you begin to alter this, then what you're effectively doing is you're beginning to break the circuit away from what it was originally intended to do, which results in the circuit generating distortion, which for the other applications outside of guitar pedals, for most of those, it wouldn't be desirable. But for guitar pedals, it works really well. response control is an example of using a pretty basic method of blending between two capacitors. In short, the input capacitor of this circuit forms a bit of a high pass filter with the first resistor in the circuit, and by changing the value of the capacitor to something slightly larger, you change the cutoff frequency of that filter, which means that the circuit can let more low end through. And likewise, if you make it a smaller value, then you end up going the other way, and what you end up with is basically a treble booster. The pot lets you blend between two different values, one that's pretty small and one that's a lot bigger. But then you can kind of sweep through that range of low end and dial in exactly how much you want for your specific setup. The one thing that is worth noting with this type of circuit is that the more low end that's let through, the higher the overall gain potential of the circuit is. So the more bass you've got going in, the more kind of overall gain you've got available on tap. The tone control is a fairly simple high and low pass filter that allows a lot of roll off of high end in the lower positions and then a slight roll off of low end on the higher positions. Tone stacks are a massive rabbit hole you could fall into because there's so many different ways to configure them, and the tiniest of parts changes will make a drastic effect on the overall sound of the circuit. What our aim was with the tone stack in the Surplus was to keep the mid-range response fairly neutral and not drift too far away from that original kind of full range overdrive boost sound that the core circuit delivers, and just allow a little bit more fine tuning over some of the really kind of fizzy high end and some of the really like boomy lows. The final thing that the Surplus has, which many of our pedals do, is the 8-way clipping diode rotary. And in this specific circuit, the diodes are hooked up to hard clip the signal. To keep it short, all you really need to know is that all diodes have a forward voltage value. And when diodes are configured to hard clip a signal, it means that one side of the diodes are tied to ground. When you play your guitar, it will put out a small voltage, and obviously that voltage will vary depending on your pickups, how hard you're playing, any other pedals in your chain that are on and active at the time, and basically anything from your signal that peaks that voltage of the diode will be clipped and sent to ground. I really like hard clipping diodes and the way they sound specifically in this type of circuit because it's very responsive to the way you play. Different diodes have various levels of forward voltage value, so you'll get varying levels of gain and compression depending on which mode you're on. Now, all of this filtering and clipping doesn't come without its trade-offs, and that is that it reduces the overall output volume of the circuit. So what we've done on the Surplus is done exactly what we mentioned a lot of other circuits do at the beginning of the video, in that we've added an additional amplify stage. This second stage stays much truer to the textbook example that I showed before, and that's really because we only really wanted it to serve as a kind of flat response, clean boost, and not colour too much of what has already been generated in that first stage. There's actually also a boost trim pot inside the Surplus, so you can take the back off and change the overall output volume of that second stage if you want to, although as it comes stock there's plenty of volume on tap. And that just about covers it. We really hope you enjoyed this little exploration and explanation of the Surplus. Hopefully that explains some of the reasoning and context behind why some of the elements of this circuit exist. Let us know what you thought about it in the comments below. And also, if you want to read any more information about it, we'll post a link to the product page of our website below. As always, please head over to our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter if you want to see what we're up to on more of a regular basis. And we'll see you next time.